Hello, it's Justin. Stick around. I'm going to show you how to make faster cam setups in Fusion 360. Smiley face. Now smash that like button.
Alright, this is actually Justin. I thought I'd let my friend Dawn do the intro there. Anyway, let's go through a few tips on how to speed up your cam setups. Let's jump into Fusion 360. I'll open a couple of example files. Keep in mind you can always get our CAD files for the project as a Patreon member. Look in the description below for that link.
Tip 1. Copy between files.
Sometimes you know you've done a project and it's already got some really good settings in it, but you don't want to start from scratch. So if you didn't know this, you can open up the other project and then find the setup you want or the operations you want. So I'm going to take maybe this drill op and this contour. I'm pushing Command on my Mac to select two of those objects, and then you can right click and click copy. Go back to the file we're working on, and then you can right click on the setup and click paste, and we'll drop in those. So you're going to get a little warning that they've been moved or copied and their references are gone, which is nice that it's telling you that. So now we have those two operations here, and you may want to use those, or you may just want to use them in another way, but you can obviously do the same thing by copying here and pasting into this other setup as well. So once you've already got it here, you can move it around between setups.
Tip 2. Compare and edit.
If you know you have another operation that you'd like to copy some settings from, and you don't want to do this thing where you're opening up one, trying to look at the settings, and then go back to the other and paste those settings in, you can actually do this cool feature called Compare and Edit. So on a Mac, you would hold Command. I think on Windows, you'd hold Control. You'd select your first operation and then your second, and you can let go of that button. And now you can right-click to compare and edit those two operations. You're going to get this new dialog, and in here you're going to see all the settings across for each adaptive clearing operations. Obviously right here we see the edit all column, so if we want to change all of them to something else, both of these will change. Otherwise you can go over in a column for each one, so you can see here which one's which and see the difference of changing one versus the other. Often I want to change them to be the same. So if I've copied an operation in, I want to use those settings on something because I have a bunch of selections and those take a while to reselect. So to do that, go to this filter down here and you can see all these different ways you can filter the different settings, and I would select different. And you're going to get to see only what's different between the two, and this is super helpful. A quick way then to, if I want to match my adaptive 4.2 to this one, all I have to do is go here and look at the setting and go, well, I want that to be 200. Or conversely, I can just change this real quick, and now they're matched. The edit all, if you could do 3 or 4 or 10 of these if you had all these different setups and you wanted all of their settings to be the same. Command or Control Shift, select all of those and then do a comparing and edit, and you'll get to see all of the different settings at once and match those settings. It's super helpful. So now they're all the same. I push OK. Do you want to update the operations with the changes? Yes. So now we've taken all the settings from Adaptive 4.2 and copied them essentially up to here. And again, this is really useful if, say, you have a whole bunch of parts and they have very specific selections that are tedious to select and you don't want to have to do that again. So just use Compare and Edit.
Tip 3. Cam templates.
Let's say we have a setup made for these plywood pieces here, and we want to cut these out. Plywood's a thing we cut often in our shop, so we actually have cam templates set up so that we can quickly drop in our most used cam operations for Baltic birch plywood. So if we have a setup made, you can right-click on that setup and click Create from Template. And so you can see there we've got Baltic birch right there, and we'll select that. These are all of our most commonly used operations in Baltic birch plywood. You'll see at the top here, we've got 4 different types of drilling. We actually don't have any drills, so the whole intent here is you just delete what you don't need. So I'm going to select those, delete, don't need those. I don't need an adaptive pocket. We don't need a dado either. So what we've got left here is just 3 different types of profile cuts. There are 3 different types of compression cutters, and we're just going to use this bottom one here. So from there, I can edit that, select my contours. I'll cut the inside contours first. We've already generated our code for those 4 pieces. That may seem simple, and we didn't have a lot of operations here, but what's great about this is it comes in with exactly the right settings we want, and we're pretty much ready to go at this point. The whole point of this is that if you do something repetitively, you definitely want to make a template for that. So I can show you how to do that real quick. So to save a cam template, all you have to do is create the template operations you want in a setup. Let's say we want to save these 3. We're going to shift click all of them and then right click. And at the bottom, you'll find store as template. And let's call this box example. You can give it a description. These are for plywood. There's some new features here, so we can choose a location if we wanted to. I'm going to store those in my cloud. So here's our other templates we use. We don't have a ton, but they are very useful. I'm going to select that folder as where I want to save it, and then click save. So you're not going to see anything happen here, but to get that back again, let's say you made another setup with this piece. You wanted to drop in those operations real quick that we just saved in that template. You would create from template and you'd click box example. And in our setup 2 now, we've got operations for all those. Sometimes you get lucky with the operations that they're model aware and you can just generate by using the key command, Command G or Control G on the setup there. The only thing that's not going to do that is something where you have to choose the selections like contour. This is probably the most effective way to speed up your cam setups. If you do something at all that's repetitive, you should definitely make a cam template for it.
Tip 4. Use patterns.
So we want to cut as many of these dish parts as we can out of our stock. And right now we have the pocket set up and a 2D contour operation. But right now we've got all this stock, and we could go back to design and copy the bodies, around to try to fill up that space. But there's actually a much easier way to cut this as many times as possible. To do that, you can select both objects and then right click, and we're going to add to new pattern. And a pattern is essentially just a folder, if you've ever used folders before, with the pattern button checked. So anything inside of that pattern folder is going to repeat, and we're going to tell it how we want it to repeat. So the most common here is a linear pattern, which is just moving in some type of straight line or a grid. There's also circular, which is useful for some objects, or mirrors. There's also duplication and component, which are a little more complicated, but also super useful. So let's do linear. We're going to select a direction. First direction is going to be to the right here. We're just going to use our part since I know it's orthogonal. And we're going to need to choose a spacing. So this part's 4 inches wide, so we're going to choose 4.5 inches, and that should give us a nice spacing there. We want to choose about 4 parts here. I believe that's as wide as our stock. And then that's all we want to go in this X direction. So let's go additional direction. And then it's going to let us choose a direction again. We just need to choose a vector or a line. Let's choose this side here. So let's do 2.5 inches in spacing. But we actually need to flip that because our stock's over here. Click flip direction. That's starting to look pretty good. Let's choose the number of instances and make this like 6. The rest of these we want to keep for now. Post-process tab, you don't really need to mess with most of the time. Push OK. So this is actually a really efficient use of CAM in general, because we're only thinking about 2 different operations here for, I don't know how many parts this is, 30 or so parts. And every time we change these 2 parts, everything changes within it. So whenever we simulate our pattern here, we're going to see it do all of the pocketing operation on every part, because we chose to order by tool. So it's going to use tool 4 all the way through if we had other operations, so that we don't have to tool change. If I speed this up, you're going to see as soon as all the pockets get done, we're going to switch tools and then start doing our cutouts. This is exactly how we would do these parts, fine tune the part. But other than this, it's doing exactly what we want. What's great also is your tabs are always going to line up because they're exactly the same orientation all the way through. So I zoom to the end here. You can see we've gone through and done every one of these. I think I missed a tab on the side, but you get the idea. All we did was set up 2 operations in one part, and all of these parts are exactly the same now. If that wasn't quite enough, it's easy to go back in here and change this to 6 and this to 10. I didn't quite use all that stock. This is a really quick way to set up a lot of cam. The way that their cam is written is exactly the same. It's just doing an offset and doing it again and again and again. And that's really reliable. It's not changing from part to part. I'd highly recommend looking into patterns whenever you have the opportunity.
Tip 5. Arrange nesting.
Sometimes it just takes quite a bit of time to get your parts from a design into your cam setup. So these parts of this box, we need to get flat onto this sheet, which is a 60 by 60 inch piece of plywood or something like that. And it takes quite a bit of time just to move each object onto here. So a new feature that's come out recently that I've done a few videos on is arrange nesting. It's a preview feature. I'll put a card here and you can look into that a little deeper and see how it works. Once you get it turned on, select Nest under the Modify drop-down. I've pinned it to my toolbar. We're going to select the objects we want to nest onto the sheet. So just immediately start selecting your pieces. So I've got all 6 there. Next, I'm going to select my plane or sketch, which is the sketch here. So unfortunately, one of the downsides of Arrange right now is if all the pieces don't fit on your stock, it's not going to fit at all. So you can take off pieces one at a time until you get those pieces to fit. So it looks like it'll fit 4 right now. That's annoying, but say we really want them to be on a 60 by 60 sheet. We have a few of those in stock. There is another way to do this. We just need to edit that sketch that we already made. And what we're going to do is essentially make another box that's 60 by 60. And then we're going to add a couple lines here, connecting the two. What we're trying to do here, and then we'll trim out those 2 pieces. So now we've effectively got one large sketch, or one section here. So now we can nest all these parts into here, and Arrange knows none the wiser. So click Finish Sketch, go back to Arrange, click on the tree here, hold Shift, and you do need to have components for each object for it to properly nest. So we've got all 6 selected there. Then select your plane or sketch, and now it's going to look at the most efficient way it can put those pieces on there. So we've effectively taken all those parts and gotten them quickly onto a sheet. And you could continue doing this with 3 or 4 more sheets. There's an advanced nesting workspace coming soon, but for now, this is the best solution inside Fusion to get your parts onto a sheet, or nesting, and they've called this Arrange. So you can actually change the border spacing or the parts separation and space those parts out a little bit more. Another cool thing, so if you push OK, we will have those parts, and if you've used parameters like this file has, we can quickly change the size of this box. Say we want it to actually be 12 inches wide on one side, and all those parts will redivide and fit just perfectly. Now they're only needing 1 sheet, which is kind of nice. But if we say made this 28 inches by 28 inches, we've filled up most of 1 sheet pretty quickly there. Another cool thing you can do with Arrange is just rearrange the shapes here. So you can click and drag a sketch, and as long as it's not overly constrained, it's going to immediately try to re-nest those parts as best it can. So you can actually have occlusions, and so you could actually have some type of very unique size piece, and it's just going to constantly try and fit your parts in there. If you scroll back in the timeline, your parts will be out of that nest. Anyway, now that we have our parts nested, we can go over to manufacturing and then create a setup. Say we want just this sheet over here, we'd need to select only the components for that in the tree. And now we've got those pieces set up. So you could say fixed box size is 60 by 60 and 0.71. Now our parts are parametrically set up in this nest that will always update, and we can continue to make changes and come back and then automatically update our cam. That's the power of Arrange. I think you'll find it pretty helpful. I hope you picked up some new cam tips. If you have one I didn't cover, I'd love to hear it in the comments. If you want to support the channel but don't want a Patreon-like subscription, Buy Me a Coffee is the perfect option. The idea of Buy Me a Coffee is to offer someone a cash equivalent of buying them a drink as a thank you. It's a one-time thing to show your support for the channel and keeps the content and coffee flowing. Look for the link below for Buy Me a Coffee. If you want to get our CAD and CAM models that we show in the videos, subscribe to our Patreon at cnc.money. Thanks.
Oh, hi there. I see you've made it this far. Now click one of these other really good videos so Justin will be happy.